I've survived 200 days in Project Zomboid's CDDA challenge with all the negative traits in the game. This video is a continuation of a longer challenge, so if you want to see the first 100 days where I started off, check out the link in the description. I've been surviving as one of the weakest possible characters for 100 days. To recap, so far I've escaped, sick and bleeding, from the town of Muldraw, located food and water, lived out in nature, and only as the days have drawn close to 100, I've started to work out and get stronger. Finally putting weight back on my frame from all the cabbages I'd started eating by my lakeside home. So I embarked on 200 days of surviving in Project Zomboid. There were no zombies by the lakeside in the remote countryside of Kentucky where I'd settled. I'd already reached level 4 in both strength and fitness, as well as a few other skill areas, but I still couldn't handle myself in combat yet against massed enemies. I'd have to work out on a steady diet of cabbages I was growing if I wanted to shed the excess weight off my frame, 99 kilograms from all the bulking up I'd been doing by farming out in nature. I got right back to work and started foraging in the woods. I found nutritious food since I'd emerged from the winter into the plentiful bounty of spring, and freshly sprouted plants growing out in the wild. Parsley, even grape leaves, all there for the taking. After a bitter winter indoors, nature was finally yielding plants and insects for my consumption. I gathered them, brought them back, and cooked them by the fireside. Then I ate and retired once again indoors to complete a few sets of squats and burpees before bed, laying out the foundation of a warrior's physique for the spring to come. From days 102 to 108 I foraged, exercised at home, and cooked the little raw food I located, grinding my strength and fitness as I trimmed my frame of the weight I'd put on during the winter, stopping only when I couldn't locate any food to scratch out worms from the earth for a paltry dinner. The cycle continued, and by day 118 I'd completed enough push-ups to raise my physique to strength level 5. Average at last. After all, improvement is mostly just physical torture punctuated by random moments of achievement. So the days rolled on, days 120 to 132, foraging, working out, and retiring for sleep in my chair in the cabin by the lakeside. On day 133, I harvested more cabbages. And at last, on day 148, I had finally completed enough burpees, push-ups, sit-ups, and squats to finally reach level 5 in fitness. Now the real adventure could begin. My cardiovascular system was stronger now, and I could handle fighting larger groups of zombies I'd encounter back in civilization. On day 149, I set out to improve my foraging skills once again, locating mushrooms, twigs, lemongrass, and even small caterpillars and bugs I could cook on my fire pit by the lakeside. As this continued, by day 153, I'd leveled up once again in my foraging skill, improving my perception and ability to live off the land. Improvement. Now I could make another attempt at clawing my way back into civilization. So I rested and prepared myself for war, sharpening a few tree branches into spears for combat. And on the morning of day 154, I set out once again from my cabin home, back to the west toward the town of Muldraw. Along the train tracks as I made my way back into town, I met with some new resistance from a few ghouls. And there I attempted to push back into the old mobile home lot. But since I'd already explored so much of the area, zombies were swarming all about the habitation. There had to be another way. And so, after a few failed attempts on day 156, I regathered my belongings and set out toward the west at sunrise, toward the town of Muldraw itself. Much as I predicted, once I reached the main road of the town, hordes of undead guarded its borders. There would be no hope of infiltrating the town this way. There would have to be another way. So with this in mind, I hatched a new plan to make my way even further west, beyond the McCoy lumber mill, already west of town, and into the thicket of the dark woods beyond, toward the farmlands and homes removed from the town. I walked through the evening in the woods, and at last sighted the farming warehouses beyond the village. When I emerged alone from the woods, there I was at last, safe. Leaving Muldraw behind, now a moment of quiet, rummaging through the stores. So many months gone by. I searched the warehouses, but found nothing other than the discarded refuse of the harvest's yield, wasted, left to the rot of the days gone. I slept in a chair that night in the warehouse, sealed from the dangers of the wider world without. And on day 157, when the sun rose, I continued my explorations. Ghouls roamed by the roadside, scattered in the wrecks of the cars left to the mercy of the elements. but nothing I couldn't handle, what with all the working out I had completed to improve myself. At last, after all my wandering, I came to the farmhouses nearby, maybe some good fortune out here in the wild. A survivor's house contained a pistol and some ammo, as well as enough processed food to tide me over and keep precious weight on my bones another week. That night, I slept in a bed in a small room for the first time. And for the first time since the very beginning, I noticed that my claustrophobia had begun to dissipate. At some point or another along the line, surviving the first 8 months had desensitized me somehow, and my claustrophobia was beginning to disappear, opening with it whole new interior worlds for exploration. So well rested from my first night sleeping in a bed for months, on day 158 I explored the rest of the countryside, locating a magnum on a reanimated police officer and using it for target practice with some of the Zeds nearby. Now there was time and space to practice and plan, all kinds of food and supplies, and at last, a huge boon. A can opener for eating all the non-perishable foods I'd located up till this point. As I roamed and scavenged the homes nearby, I dismantled the furniture, reaching carpentry level 2 on day 160. The next day I set out in search of useful supplies, but found little more than rotting vegetables in all the farming warehouses nearby. After a little skirmish in the neighborhood, I kept moving in my search, all the while dismantling the furniture and electronics to raise my skill set as I wandered across the countryside. I continued my investigations, and when I made my way back out onto the road on day 162, I located a working vehicle, an ambulance, beat up to pieces but still barely functional. Now I had a car and the radius of my search could increase. The next few days I continued with my dismantling, and by day 166 I disassembled enough crates to reach carpentry level 3. Now I was stronger. The spears I'd create would be more robust at full condition, and they would last longer in combat. Now armed with sharpened polearms, I could clear out infestations, and I drove my way back to the farmhouse to sleep peacefully, unabated by claustrophobia or roaming undead alike. After a little detour, I took off once again on day 169 in the ambulance toward my old settlements, stopping on the way only to train my maintenance skill by hitting a garage door with a board. This would make my weapons last longer in combat and give me greater fighting endurance. Then I packed up all the loot I'd scavenged up till that point and loaded in the back of my ambulance and made my way back off through the countryside to loot more abandoned homes and dismantle more cars for mechanical skill, stopping only to hit another garage door once again and keep grinding my maintenance skill. At last, after a long bout of wandering, it all came to a head on day 175 when I traveled far enough south to hit the main 4-lane road leading to the nearby town of Rosewood. I set up on the west side of town in a couple abandoned houses off the highway exit, then started making my way eastward toward the outskirts of the town, all the while dispatching more ghouls roaming on the road day by day as I crept closer and closer toward the town. Finally, in the morning of day 179, a blanket of thick fog covered my entrance to the first building, a gas station on the north edge of the town. As I was dwindling in food and supplies, the fresh stocks would be more than enough to tide me over as I made my next push in toward the center of town. Back and forth, ebb and flow, by day 184 I'd killed enough ghouls between the houses and the gas station to make for safer passage all over the edge of town. But at the end of the fighting, rewards, all worth the toil. Peanuts, soda, chips, and plenty of other processed foods to keep my weight up as I made my way back into the bones of civilization. By night, I slept in a bedroom loft above the gas station, and at daybreak I would keep pushing southward toward the mechanics shop adjacent to my building. The days passed, 185 to 190. I looted the pizza world across the street, dismantling everything I could lay my hands on, and at last I stretched out my arms farther and farther south toward the supermarket. Food, and plenty of it after all that toil. The next step took patience, but by day 192 I finally penetrated the supermarket and purged its inhabitants to secure a huge boon of food to keep me strong and healthy for weeks to come. I was finally in, but I'd have to hang on with grit. More undead approached the areas I had already cleared out day by day, and I spent most of days 193 to 194 clearing the area around the grocery store, making it safe to sleep for the night in a chair in a management office above it all. Ticking closer to day 200, it was time to start arming up with new skills, so I made my way out into the rest of the town to prepare myself, dismantling cars in the parking lots and electronics in the hotel nearby, the search for watches, all to improve my electrical and mechanical skills to let me hotwire and weaponize the cars all scattered about in the streets to take on the rest of the town next. Finally, after so much improvement, I'd grown stronger, and now I could take on groups of 5 or 10 or even 15 ghouls, but maybe not more than that. By day 200, when I took stock of my progress, I was finally coming along in my electrical and mechanical skills, now having mastered building and maintaining strong spears on this leg of the journey, as well as improving my strength and fitness. I was almost beyond average, and it was all coming to a head now with new frontiers to explore and taller mountains to climb. But the rest of the challenge remained to days 201 and beyond. Over half a year now gone and still counting the days, ticking ever higher in strength, wisdom, and resolve every moment. Habit compounds daily, and the greatest discoveries are yet to be made. We need only stretch out our arms further. And what starts as a whisper grows in time to a cacophonous roaring. Anyway, that's about what it took to survive 200 days in Project Zomboid. What lay in store next awaits to be seen. I'm Ambiguous Amphibian. Big thanks to my patrons, who always wake up at the crack of dawn to beat the early bird and get the worm. Until next time.